Hello, today we'll go through some reading comprehension struggles students are facing during the TOEFL examination. So the first is not enough time. What do I mean by it? So you get 35 minutes for the reading section in which you have to do like two passages with each questions, and these passages are like 700 words long. So if we do the calculation, you have 35 by 2, you have 17.5 minutes per passage, and per passage you have like 10 questions. And if I remove the reading time from the passage, you have like 1 minute per question. So you have to practice a lot to not stuck at point number one. Second is students try to find the answers directly to save time. But in reality, you find the answers directly 40% of the time, and rest of the time you spend more time in finding answers directly rather than just reading the passage and answer those questions. For example, you can hop on to TOEFLGoGlobal.com. I'll paste the link in the description. If you go to practice questions and then click start reading practice, I'll explain you this point, second point. So the question is why it is impossible to identify the time period of theaters in Greece. So people just start searching the word impossible, identify, and time period. So how do they do this incorrectly is they find these keywords, they match from the first para, and whatever it suits, they mark the question. This approach is followed by n number of students, and it is very bad. I'll explain you later when we are practicing a reading comprehension. The third point is you don't have enough RC questions which have answer explanations. Definitely, you will find some Barron's book in which you will find a lot of passages with lot of answer explanation, but those answer explanation are so huge that it's just not comfortable to read them, and they are just so far away from each other. From like if the question is on page number 100, you can find the answer explanation at page number like 400 something. So it's very uncomfortable to practice a lot of reading comprehensions like that. So what you can do is practice these questions, hit next, and when you are done with all of these questions, you just submit it and then click review here, and it will show you the answer you marked is correct or wrong, and it will show you explanations for that, why option A is wrong, why B is wrong, why D is wrong, and why C is the correct answer. So it is very handy and very convenient for TOEFL test takers. So now what we will do is hop onto an RC to practice it. We'll just click next passage here. So just let's read it. Symbiosis is a close, long-lasting physical relationship between two different species. In other words, the two species are usually physical contact. At least one of them derives some sort of benefit from this contact. There are three different categories of symbiotic relationship: parasitism, commensalism, and mutualism. So this passage talks about some symbiosis. If you are not familiar with it, venom is also a symbiosis. Like it needs a host on which he can live upon. So this is the same symbiosis here. It is a long-lasting physical relationship between two species. So venom is a species and human is a species. So the relation between Eddie and venom is symbiosis. And there are three types of symbiotic relationship. You don't need to remember them. You just need to remember it exists. There are three different types of relationship. You don't need to understand it fully, just need to have it in your mind until the next paragraph or the next RC. So now we talk about parasitism, which is a type of symbiotic relationship. It's a relationship in which one organism known as the parasite live in another organism known as the host, from which it derives nourishment. Generally, the parasite is much smaller than the host. Although the host is harmed by interaction, it is generally not killed immediately by the parasite, and some host individuals may live long time and be relatively little affected by their parasites. Some parasites are much more destructive than others. However, newly established parasite-host relationships are likely to be more destructive than those have a long evolutionary history. The long-standing interaction between the parasite and the host, the two species generally evolve in such a way that they can accommodate one another. It is not in the parasite's best interest to kill the host. If it does, it must find another. So, for example, Venom. If Venom kills Eddie, he has to find another host to live upon. Likewise, the host evolves defenses against the parasites, often reducing the harm done by the parasites to a level the host can tolerate. So if we come to the question one, the word derives in the passage is closing meaning to. I would also like to add one more point here, that you don't know vocab. You're not able to solve vocab questions, and there are a lot of vocab questions in the RC. What you can do is open up another browser and just click the vocab ladder and just practice vocabulary here. It's very nice, very decent, and a clean UI to practice words which are very frequent in TOEFL. For example, optimistic. You need to know what is optimistic. You need to know what is identical, potent, reject, and upbeat. So from one question, you are practicing 5 words. So definitely it's the potent here. Coming back to the RC again. So derive here means obtains. We'll mark that and go to the next question. The word categories in the passage is closest in meaning to categories are classifications. And then we hit next. The word relatively in the passage is closest meaning to comparatively. And now we have the question 4 here, which is from the passage 2. In which of the sentences below expresses the information in the highlighted sentence? The other choices change the meaning or leave out the important information. So we'll read the highlighted passage again, really quick. Newly established parasite host relationship are likely to be more destructive than those that have a long evolutionary history. So parasites with host, or I would say symbiosis, which are new in relationship, are more destructive than which are there in history from a long time. For example, Venom and Eddie are in the history from like 20, 30 years, I believe. But if there is a new Venom, it's more likely to be destructive, because if it is not destructive, it wouldn't have survived, right? We'll look at the option. A parasite is less likely to destroy the host when it attaches itself at the pores. Parasites that have lived on hosts for a long time have probably done a lot of damage. The most destructive phase for host and parasite first invades in it. So third can be the answer, but we'll look at the fourth. Fourth option, the relationship between parasite and the host will evolve over time. So it's nothing evolving written in the highlighted statement, and it's definitely not the first option, not the second option, and fourth. So it's definitely the third option. So we'll move on to the next. The word tolerate in the passage is closest meaning to, so it's definitely not oppose. For example, if your mother cannot tolerate your behavior, she's not opposing you, she's not getting profit from it, and she cannot avoid it. So if she cannot tolerate your behavior, means she cannot permit you to do things which is not good. Now, according to the paragraph 3, how do ectoparasites survive? So now we'll read paragraph 3. We have answered 6 questions just from paragraph 1 and 2, not 6, 5. Parasites that live on surfaces of their host are known as ectoparasites. Fleas, lice, and some molds and mildews are example of ectoparasites. Many other parasites such as tapeworms, malaria parasites, many kinds of bacteria, and some fungi are called endoparasites. So, ectoparasites live on the skin and endoparasites live inside because they live inside of the bodies of their host. A tapeworm lives in intestines of the host where it is able to resist being digested and makes use of nutrients in the intestine. So we'll answer paragraph 3. They live in mold mildew of their host. We definitely saw mold and mildew in the first line of the paragraph. Fleas, slice, and some moldews are example of ectoparasites, and we are talking about ectoparasites here only. Second option is they digest food in the intestines. These are the actions of endoparasites. They live on the nutrients, the bacterial hosts. It's definitely not this answer. They inhabit outside parts of the host. So option 1, they live in the mold and mildew on their host. Mold and mildew are the examples for ectoparasites, but it does not explain how do ectoparasites survive. So the answer is definitely fourth option. Moving on to seventh question, the word actually in the passage is closest meaning to really. And then we move in paragraph 8. Why does the author use example of acacia tree? Now to read paragraph 8, we quickly read Paragraph 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Even plants can be parasite. Mistletoe is a flowering plant that is parasitic on trees. It establishes itself on the surface of the trees when bird transfers the seed to the tree. It grows down to the water conducting tissues of tree and uses the water and minerals it obtains from these tissues to support its growth. Commensalism is a relationship between organisms in which one organism benefits while other is not affected. It is possible to visualize parasitic relationship evolving into commensal one. Since parasites generally evolve to do as little harm to the host, it is possible, and the host is combating the negative effects of the parasite. They might eventually evolve to the point where a host is not harmed at all. So we're talking about communalism and we have talked about parrotism. Moving on to the paragraph 6, many examples of commensal relationship exist. Many orchids use trees as surface upon which to grow. The tree is not harmed or helped, but the orchids need surface upon which to establish itself and also benefit by being close to the top of the tree, where it can get more sunlight and rain. Some mosses, ferns, and many vines also make use of surfaces of trees in this way. In the ocean, many sharks have smaller fish known as remora attached to them. Remoras have suck on the top of their heads and they can use to attach to the shark. In this way, they can hitchhike a ride as the shark swings along. When the long shark feeds the remora, frees itself and obtains small bits of food that shark misses. Then remora reattaches. The shark does not appear to be positively or negatively affected by remoras. Mutualism is another kind of symbiotic relationship that is actually beneficial to both species. In many mutualistic relationships, the relationship is obligatory. The species cannot live without each other. In another, species can exist separately but are more successful when they involve in mutualistic relationships. Some species are acacia, thorny tree, provide food in form of sugar solution in little structures of their stems. Certain species of and feed on solution and live in the tree, which they will protect from other animals by attacking any animal that begins to feed on the tree. Both organisms benefit and receive food and a place to live, and the tree is protected from animals that would use it as food. So the question is, why does the author use example of acacia tree? He uses to explain that some species provide food in the form of sugar solutions in little structures on their stems. He does not talk about ants in this sentence. He gives an example for mutualism. Mutualisms can be a relationship between plants and animals, but the big topic he's talking about is mutualism. Acacia is just an example of a relationship between plants and trees, or plants and animals. The fourth option is to present a problem that occurs often in nature. No. Third, no. To explain how two species can benefit from the contact and to demonstrate how ants survive by living in the trees. Definitely, he demonstrates ants surviving living in the trees, but the bigger topic is mutualism. To support mutualism, he gave an example of acacia tree. Now we'll scroll up and read the sentence. They live on the feathers of birds or fur of animals. So something is living on the feathers of birds or the fur of animals. It's definitely some kind of small worms living on the skin of the birds. And we have talked about it. It's definitely some kind of ectoparasite. So the main thing to look at this is we are talking about they. We have to find out what is they in this sentence. So if we go on to the previous sentence, which is before A, we are talking about parasites. So if we replace they with parasites, parasites live on the feathers of birds or the fur of animals. Or ectoparasites live on the feathers of birds or fur of animals. So if we read it out aloud, parasites that live on the surface of the host are known as ectoparasites. They live on the feathers of the birds or the fur of animals. A is definitely looking a good answer, but we'll quickly go on to B, C, and D. Going on to B, In the second sentence, we are now talking about endoparasites, and definitely we'll cancel out B. And in the third sentence, we are talking about tapeworm. So we cannot replace tapeworms with they because tapeworm is an endoparasite. Going on to D, if you read, it grows down into the water conducting tissues in the trees and uses the water and the minerals. So we are talking about something water conducting tissues in the tree, and it is not at all related with birds and the fur of animals. So we'll mark A and then move on to the next question. We'll look at the option 1. Parasitic species will feed on the host species, causing varying degrees of damage to the host as a result of the relationship. So in paragraph 1, we definitely talked about how parasites cause damage to their host. Orchids benefit being near the top of the tree. Definitely, we talked about orchids, but they are not the main point and main subject of the paragraph. Nodules in the roots of plants supply nitrogen from bacteria. Again, not the main point of the passage. In communalism, one species will benefit from relationship, but the other species is not affected by it. Three main points of the passage were parasitism, communalism, and mutualism. So definitely D is the correct answer. Certain species form mutualistic relationship in which both species benefit from the physical contact. I think it's the answer, but we'll read the next one. Evolutionary changes in species may allow them to live in close physical contact with little damage to each other. So definitely, I think E is the correct answer. But if we submit, we have done all correctly. And to review them, you can just go review them one by one. And if you have any doubts, you can just go click show explanation. It will give you a detailed explanation why A is not correct, C is not correct, D is not correct, and why B is correct. To now end the video, you have to overcome these struggles one by one, and you have to practice daily to succeed in your final examinations.